We're going to move on to our last speaker of the day before a fun evening ahead. We'll start by introducing Nikki Cooley. Nikki is the Senior Program Coordinator for the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals Tribal Climate Change Program. ITEP at Northern Arizona University and the USDA Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station began collaborating on a project focused on tribal climate change issues in the Southwest. Goals of the project include identifying work being done by tribes in Arizona and New Mexico on climate change, assessing their climate change research and information needs, making tribes aware of resources and opportunities that might assist them in their work, and sharing research results of the project with tribes and the U.S. Forest Service. Please welcome Nikki Cooley.
I like how he keeps saying that our last speaker, and then I promise we're going to have fun. So I'll try not to keep you too much from your fun evening. Nikki Cooley da Sajjan Kenya ani nishlon look at the na abashichin is a thane da shinale tro ahead line da shiche. Shant to that do bistot isn't da in Nasha. What I didn't as son nishle. I'm of the Townhouse clan, born for the Reed People clan. I come from Shanto and Blue Gap, Arizona. And I am now the co-manager for this program, ITEP's climate change program. I'm very honored to be here, and I appreciate Courtney White extending the invitation. And I was very surprised to see how many people that are here, the variety, the diversity. I just came from Vegas where I was almost 100% Native Americans that were concerned about their ranching and livestock and water issues. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself really quick. I grew up on the Navajo reservation with no running water, no electricity. I grew up in a hogan, and I used to herd sheep, and I always tell people I am a sheep herder. And I know I'm not that great at it, but I know how to butcher, I know how to shear sheep. I rode horses by the time I was 3 years old, so I know what it's like to live off the land. And my parents still raise churro sheep and horses, and we don't do cattle, but my philosophy in life has always been to go back to that lifestyle. I live in Flagstaff right now with my husband and my 2 children, and we have chickens in our backyard too. And my kids, they carry the chickens around and name them Big Chicken and Big Betty and all that stuff. So we try to live that philosophy, and I wanted to kind of tell you about that going into my position. And I love my job. I absolutely love it. I am, like I said, I'm the co-court manager with Karen Cosette. So ITEP was created by Virgil, Masiesva and Bill Auberly in 1992 to strengthen the tribal capacity and sovereignty of tribal natural resource management programs, but also while keeping in touch with culturally relevant policies and management ideas. But the climate change program was actually created in 2009, so we've only been around for a few years. And so we've just grown. There's from 1 person to about 4 people right now. And ITEP itself actually has a solid waste program. They do composting, courses on composting, recycling. We have a indoor and outdoor air quality program. We have environmental education outreach program. So we work with tribes all over the lower 48 and Alaska. So when Hawaii gets federally recognized, we're going to go down there right away. Yes. So this program we got funding from the EPA to build this website for tribes that were really interested in climate change and learning more about it and how to address it. And if you recall, before this current administration, climate change was a bad word. And I've had federal folks say if they even muttered that word in their workplace, they were either reprimanded or in danger of being removed from their current position. So this administration has really done a lot for tribes and then in terms of addressing climate change. So we are 100% grant funded, and right now what we do is 3-day trainings on tools and technical assistance. We basically go through the whole plan of how to write an adaptation plan. So tribes all over the U.S. are very interested in writing a management plan or else inserting the language of climate change into them. So we have a steering committee, so it's not just me and Karen saying, okay, this is what tribes should be doing, and this is how we are going to do it. We actually have 10 members of our steering committee, our advisory committee, 5 tribal representatives and 5 federal agencies that advise us on what, because they work directly on the ground with tribes and also on policies in Washington, D.C., so we get input from them. So they're from all over the U.S. So as I said, this is our training. Since 2009, we've had about 25 trainings all over the U.S. We've gone all the way to I think the farthest east we've been is probably Cherokee, North Carolina. So a lot of our training is concentrated up on the west side of the U.S. And we have reached almost 300 representatives from the federally recognized tribes. So can someone tell me how many tribes there are in the U.S. federally recognized? 540. I see here 540. One more? 521. That's a very good guess. Yes, it's about 564. I tell my people that my participants, that we need to do this type of training. This is for you, so you don't have to be starting from scratch. This is the trainings that I've been to this year, all the way up to Anchorage, because it's really remote up there, and tribes have to gather in one place, and that's Anchorage. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop when they go to Anchorage. They go to a training, and they also go to take care of their health there. They have their health services there, and they also go there to visit families. So that's one of the things we try to do is make it easy for tribes to access this type of training, because a lot of tribes don't have the whatever capacity, whether it's funding or the manpower to do these type of trainings until this current administration. The Obama administration gave almost $10 million to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and I understand that, personally, I understand that BIA has not always been a favor of natives, but lately they've been doing a pretty good job of trying to make that up. And one of that is almost $10 million to the BIA climate change program, and that's where a lot of these tribes have been attending trainings all over the U.S. And if you have heard of the trainings up in, or the tribes up in the Northwest, there's the Salish Kootenai tribes. Oh gosh, there's so many, I can't remember, but they actually have adaptation plans published. Some of those tribes are way ahead of the curve, and down here in the Southwest, we're still trying to catch up. So a lot of the things that we do for tribes is also doing webinars. Right, because that's cheap. They don't have to get a hotel room. They don't have to get a flight. They just gotta pop on their computer and ask questions after we give them a webinar about what type of funding there is available out there, what type of new tool is out there for them to use for their management plan. So We work a lot with the EPA. We work a lot with the BIA, the BLM. So pretty much almost all the agencies, we have a relationship with them because they all cover tribal lands. So one of the things that we do is we have a toolkit for the tribes. So I remember when I was a forestry student, they asked us to write a mock for a managed forest management plan, and mine was about this thick. And I had to use examples from previous students, like how did they do it, literally starting from scratch. And it's one of the hardest things to this day, besides giving birth, that I've done is write that mock management plan. So I do kind of understand how hard it is to start one. So for tribes, ITEP, we try to give them the tools and resources right there. So this is kind of like a cheat sheet for them. And they can say, if they're asking what goes into an adaptation plan, we can say, well, here's what you need. We give them a checklist. A lot of the tribes have to get permission from their council, and they have to write a resolution up. Who's written a resolution in here? I'm pointing, looking at you. Yes. It's not easy, is it? And it's not easy to get it through. So we take examples from published, currently publicly shared tribal resolutions, and we share it with the tribes who are interested in writing one. We help them write it. And then also there's this worksheet, what goes into an adaptation plan, like a vulnerability assessment, prioritizing, how to reach which scientists in that region to help, inform this plan. And at the bottom there is a list of 30 adaptation plans that have been currently publicly published, and we share that with the tribes. So this is one of the things that we do is share this toolkit. So tribes aren't starting from scratch. And as you may know, sometimes there's a lot of turnover in tribal environmental departments. People move on to different positions, or they go out of state, out of the reservation. So there's a big need for not starting from scratch, and this is one of the things we do. And I encourage you to look it up. It may be useful. I tell them, you may not use it, you may know somebody who needs it. The other thing we do besides the trainings is that we work one-on-one with the tribes and actually sitting down with them on their lands with their people, community members, tribal leaders, elders, the youth, and environmental staff that are actually drafting adaptation plans, and we work with them. My colleague, Karen Cosette, is going to Yurok. She's already been about 6 times this year. She's going to Yurok next month to have a big writing session for the tribes. And then we're also working with the Gila River Indian community down in Phoenix. And we've held 2 community workshops. And the last one, we had their governor, the parents of the current governor, and and then also just a high school kid. She was a sophomore that was there with her mom, and a few other people from the community to inform them why they should be involved and what should go and what are they concerned about. Because we don't want to just write it for them and say, oh, this represents everybody's point of view. That's not our motto, or that's not our path that we want to take. We want them to be involved. So that's the type of thing that we do. And we're also going to work with the La Jolla Band in California next year to hold a tribal summit for all the California tribes. So we offer our expertise and help the tribes out there. This might be of interest to you. We have about over 40 profiles, basically case studies that we write on different tribes that are doing really amazing stuff, like implementing solar panels, composting. What they're doing, I think in the Bishop Paiute tribe, they might be doing implementing solar panels on all low-income housing, but employing tribal members to do that and whatnot. So so this is, please visit this link and look up all the amazing stuff tribes are doing. Again, we have an outreach that we do, a newsletter that we do. I put it out every month. I think that's how Courtney got a hold of me. He's been a long-time subscriber to our web newsletter. And I send it out every month, and it has everything from funding, current funding, that any tribe can apply to, any events that are coming up, any trainings, any contacts. So if you call me up and say, I want to know somebody from the Fisheries and Wildlife Department at the Navajo Nation, I can probably tell you that right away. So we try to keep that database going. So the Southwest, when I was saying that we're kind of behind the curve there, there's a lot of Southwestern tribes that have attended our trainings, but it's usually one person that's working on climate change issues. It's not like a whole team. I wish we had at least 10 people in all the tribes, in each of the tribes, working on maybe an adaptation plan or a vulnerability assessment, but often it's one person. The only ones that have been publicly published as of now is the Navajo Nation, who have written a vulnerability assessment for the wildlife species. So basically, they've chosen about 3 to 4 species that they've identified as being vulnerable to the current and future effects of climate change, and one of them is the golden eagle. So the golden eagle is more susceptible to climatic and non-climatic factors. I know of 2 other tribes that are in the process. The Kewah Pueblo, also known as the Santo Domingo. I know they just got funding last year, and they are in the process of actually doing an assessment on their riparian resources. So I don't know much more than that because they haven't published anything. And I will not say the next tribe's name because I don't want to butcher it. Yes, that's it. I was going to say that. And they're also, doing another assessment on riparian resources also. There's a little Colorado River Watershed Association. Who's heard of that? Yes, so it's a compilation of a few chapters in the Eastern Agency, and there's one woman named Janine Yazzie, and she is pretty much determined, I think she's 27? She's determined to write an adaptation plan for her community, those chapters. And she attended one of our trainings, and she's gung-ho. So we have a lot of people that are motivated to do this and doing it by themselves. And I will tell you, there's a lady up in Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians up in Wisconsin. She wrote an adaptation plan by herself. Her boss said, I'm not going to give you staff, I don't think you need it. And so that set a fire under her, and she said, you know what, I believe in this so much, I'm going to do it. And she got the backing of all the tribal council members and a lot of influential community members, and created partnerships with a lot of folks that do the same work that you do up in her area. So how did you do that? How did you do that? And she's like, I went to church, I went to dinner, I invited them to dinner, I visited them at their offices, I made personal relationship. And that's not easy. But yet she did it, and they have an adaptation plan that is published. So I always say that to put a guilt trip on my participants, because especially the men that are complaining like, oh, we don't have enough staff. So there's a lot going on in Indian country in terms of climate change. The other thing I wanted to address is that a lot of our trainings comes up is food sovereignty. Food security issues. Who's worked on a reservation here or with a tribe? Okay, good, that's quite a bit, good. And as you may know, that most reservations are, Food deserts, yes, yes. I mean, on the Navajo Nation, I know there's an effort by First Things First, a program to teach parents how to feed their children healthy foods. But other than that, you know, I'll see an apple or banana there, and when you walk into Bashes, what do I see is but plastic crap for sale from China, you know? But when you walk into Flagstaff, when you walk into that Bashes, there's a whole row of fruit right there near the entrance and the fried chicken. But the point is that there's fresh fruit right there. And that's pretty sad. And a lot of people have been saying the same thing from other tribes, is that we don't have access to that food. Businesses won't come on our reservation, or it's hard to start a business on the reservation because of politics, or just the process is too hard and whatnot. And that's why I think there's a greater need for these partnerships for people that are in your, for the organizations that you work for, and other organizations that aren't here, that tribes need to partner with to kind of get that knowledge, to get that information. We are educated, but I don't think we sometimes know about the information because we're so isolated on the res most of the time. And so I know, for example, the Duck Valley Paiute tribe up in Nevada, their trout, or one of their native fish, I think it's trout, I don't want to say it, but I might be wrong. But one of their cold water fish species is pretty much dying out. They found a fish species that can adapt to warmer waters, and because they depend on the fish for their economics. It's a huge part of their economics on the res, so that's the way they're adapting and whatnot. So just to give you an example, let's see. So in the future, I'm really glad that I'm here, because in the future, ITEP's climate change program is going to, actually next year, we're going to start inserting climate change, or food security and access, sovereignty issues, and into our trainings and whatnot, because a lot of people are asking for it. There's a lot of people that actually have been saying we can't hold our ceremonies during the same time of year that we've been doing since time immemorial, because these plants don't grow during this season, or we can't harvest them in time, or they've already died off before we can have those ceremonies. So that culture, it's really shifting the people that way. And I know all of you sitting here know what I'm talking about, what you feel for the land, and you work it, you see it, you love it, and when you see something change, it has a big effect on you. And you understand why it's happening, but it's hard to comprehend completely. And for a lot of these tribes, it's the same way, and their elders, although some of them are moving on, they are very concerned about this, and it makes, and that has an effect on their mental, their spiritual, physical health. That's something, what's that? In life, it's affecting them. So that's what a lot of tribes are really concerned about. And so we're going to address that. Right now we have a lot of federal funding, but we're looking towards private funding to have our trainings a little bit more flexible and whatnot. So because there's a big struggle between the modern Western way of life and the traditional way of life. And I think I heard that Gila River has the largest rate of diabetes for their people. And these people used to they were a fisheries people, until the Bilaganas, the white man, stopped the water, the Colorado River, from going into their land, on their lands. So then the Gila River people had to move on to harvesting the mesquite beans, which they used to turn into flour and just sell it to everybody's mom and dad, grandpa, even settlers and whatnot. And so when the water stopped, they depended on that, but that wasn't enough to sustain them financially, so they start cutting down all the mesquite trees to sell it for wood. So what does that create? Deforestation. And did you know that when you drive to Tucson along that road, they used to call it the New York thickets? Do you know why they used to call it the New York thickets? Can you guess why? Yeah, you couldn't walk through it, you couldn't run through, they were just so close together and it was so populated. That's how that area used to be. That's just one example of what is happening all over the U.S., and especially, I'm talking about tribal land specifically. But so, I personally know what it's like to struggle between traditional and the modern way. I hear a lot of people say, well, don't they? Well, John McCain just said, well, they have casinos, don't they? And in response to why there wasn't enough funding for education. But that's the mindset a lot of people have towards Native people in the U.S., or all over the world, actually. They have 2 arms and they have 2 legs, they can work. But it's not the same when you've been tied to the land for so long. When I was born, when my belly button fell off, it was buried in the horse corral, or the sheep corral. Because that keeps us, in the Navajo philosophy, that keeps us tied to the land, right? And that's why I'm such a great sheep herder, because my umbilical cord's buried there. My daughter, I think she's back there, hers is buried in the horse corral, her umbilical cord, and she is an amazing athlete. She's only 6, but she says she runs as fast as the wind. And so to that point, you're tied to the land. It's innate. I think you know what I'm talking about. I moved to Michigan for 3 years and then North Carolina for 3 years, and I hated it. And it was always that draw back. I'm never going to leave this area again because I'm within the sacred mountains. So in that sense, what I'm trying to point out to you is that it is hard for us to comprehend forgetting our culture and moving on to something completely different that's not natural to us. And that is why there's a high rate of alcoholism, there's meth, there's a lot of that everywhere. But I'm talking about our Native youth, our Native people here, So a lot, and then, they were saying that climate change is kind of like a triple effect. Climate change, the more intense rains, the more intense droughts, or the longer periods of drought, has an effect on the mental, spiritual, and physicality of people. Is that right? And you know it better than most people that are in the city of Albuquerque. You work the land, you work with people who work the land, you're here because you are concerned. And that's the same way, that's the same way it is for Native people. So that, you're probably wondering, how does that tie into ITEP? That ties into ITEP because that's deeply embedded in our philosophy. It's written in our mission statement, and we have a great reputation because of that. We try to stick to that philosophy. It's for you, the Navajo way, we don't take, we don't say bad words, we just give. And that's what we try to do at ITEP. We liked working with Native people, we do it for the Native people, and I will tell you, we have a staff of about 30, and almost about 20 of them have been working there probably for more than 10 years. We've almost been around for 25 years. That's a lot.